Yo, what's up? My name's Retro Pat, and I like to talk about video games. If you enjoy your time here today, remember to like the video and subscribe for more yapping. Or dislike and call me smelly if I wasted your time. Keep in mind, a lot of what I'm about to say is just my opinion, and take this as a qualifier for each sentence from here on forward. Always feel free to politely disagree with me in the comments. Call of Duty is the most successful video game franchise created in the United States and the fourth most successful video game franchise of all time, behind Mario, Tetris, and Pokemon. Over the years, Call of Duty has been some of the best in gaming for different reasons. Call of Duty 4 and Modern Warfare 2 sporting some of the most fun online multiplayer at the time, Black Ops 2 with some of the most competitive play, bringing league play to the series for the first time, fun survival mini-games like zombies and the heavily underrated survival mode in Modern Warfare 3 from 2011 created hours of single-player or cooperative fun. But the thing that Call of Duty is the most underrated for, in my opinion, is their storytelling.
Prepare yourself, men! Mason! Over here! The down is going to rip us to shreds! Have faith!
COD has always been incredible about telling an engaging and an emotional story with gritty characters while letting you mindlessly shoot your way through all of that action. Well, unless you're playing on veteran difficulty like a psycho, then you're waiting 20 minutes for your squad to whittle down the enemies each checkpoint just so you can advance. But as Call of Duty has changed and adapted over the years, the focus on the storyline has dwindled in favor of other gameplay elements. Some would say that it's a bad thing, some would say it's good. To me, it makes no difference. I'm just here to reminisce on something that I appreciated in old Call of Duty games. Today, I'm going to be replaying the first Call of Duty game that I ever played, Call of Duty: The Finest Hour, where Call of Duty storylines began. Well, technically they began on PC with the first installment simply titled Call of Duty back in 2003. The original Call of Duty did end up getting a later port onto the Xbox 360, PS3, and even the N-Gage, hilariously, but that was in 2005. The first Call of Duty game on console was Finest Hour, which was released in November 16th, 2004 in North America. It received decent reviews all around, averaging a 7 out of 10 from most major review sites. In 2004, the Call of Duty franchise was actually known for its gritty realism and portrayal of all sides of combat. They weren't afraid to show opposing perspectives through the process of war. But how good was Call of Duty Finest Hour actually? It holds a special place in my heart, and I still vividly remember certain missions to this day. But I also remember it feeling clunky, and the graphics being so dark to the point where it was hard to see, and the visual clarity became a major concern. But these memories are 15 years old or so at this point. So let's build on top of those memories and re-experience Call of Duty together.
Europe, 1940. Hitler's ruthless quest to extend Germany's borders has his people at war with the world. The mobilization of armies by Britain and France proves no deterrent as the Nazis invade their European neighbors to the north and west, while extending their reach eastward towards Russia's critical oil fields. By fall, Germany's lightning war to soften England is launched, and America increases production, racing to aid the British. By 1941, the battle for North Africa is on, as Rommel's Africa Corps arrives in Tripoli. On the Eastern Front, an impatient Hitler breaks his pact with the Soviets. Stalin responds with a scorched earth policy, intent on leaving only ruins for the Nazi invaders. But one by one, his cities fall. Now, in 1942, massive German air raids commence against Stalingrad, and the battle for this noble city turns vicious. The Red Army refuses to retreat, and a counteroffensive is launched against a force that now stretches from the Volga to the Atlantic and deep into the African desert. Against impossible odds, millions come forward to answer the call of their countries, their families, their lives.
My name is Alexander Sokolov. I thought I was safe. As a watchmaker's apprentice, I would learn the business, then open a shop of my own. Maybe get married, have children, start a life. But now our cities are under attack, and Stalingrad will put an end to those dreams. We should have known the Germans would turn on us, break the treaty. They have no honor. The commissars rounded us up so quickly, speaking of the motherland, the sacrifices of our brothers, our duty. I'm only 20, but I'm ready to fight to the death. The sight of my home, Stalingrad, infuriates me. It is as if hell itself were burning.
Whoever said video games don't teach anything? Nothing will make a kid care more about history than a well-designed, edgy World War II FPS game on PlayStation 2. The next cutscene introduces us to a young 20-year-old explaining his ambitions of being a watchmaker and how they are on hold as he goes off to war. And then we get this iconic scene.
Welcome to Stalingrad. You're about to begin the greatest moment of your life. The Germans have lost hundreds of tanks and planes. Hitler's brutalized hordes are now advancing towards Stalingrad over mountains of their own dead bodies. Our Bolshevik party, our nation, our great country have given us the task not to let the enemy reach the Volga and to defend the city of Stalingrad. Forward against the enemy, up into the unremitting battle, comrades, for Stalingrad, for our great country, not one step back. Cowards and traitors will be shot. Do not count days, do not count miles, count only the number of Germans you have killed. Kill the German, this is your mother's prayer. Kill the German, this is the cry of your Russian earth. Do not waver, do not let up, kill. Death to the German invader. Go, go, move.
Get off the boat!
We actually play as a Russian soldier first, young and hungry for revenge against the Germans for betraying them. In the starting sequence, we can't fully control our character's movement, but we can move our camera, allowing for just enough control to see the carnage, the shots and the explosions, the dead and the wounded, but not enough control to do anything about it yet. It's ominous and puts a small amount of anxiety into the player as we are stepping onto the battlefield for the first time. We quickly get given a weapon and rushed off into the trenches by Sergeant Puskov. Something COD always did really well that I noticed growing up was giving every NPC a name like this. It really does help you build a quicker attachment to them. To physically see that text on screen versus only remembering it in a passing dialogue impacts the player greatly. I'm not sure if Call of Duty was the first franchise to do this, but they certainly used it well. We follow Sergeant Puskov from cover to cover for a bit while our comrades get mowed down in front of us, from trench to shredded buildings that now just consist of some jagged collections of bricks acting as great bullet sponges. The orange lights from the fires from the burning cities act as beautiful checkpoints guiding us in the extremely dim environment. Was this amount of darkness done on purpose to dull our senses even more and add that much more anxiety to our first battle experience? It's possible, but I don't think it's worth the decision, at least at the start of the game. A new player is already so overwhelmed. Starting that new experience, starting that new game, meeting all of the characters, learning the controls, adjusting to the graphics and their surroundings, making that harder with the lack of lighting just feels too standoffish to your new audience, and further prevents them from wanting to experience your game. Now, this was probably less of a problem back in the day where when you bought a game for $60, even if it sucked, you were probably toughing through it a fair bit to get the extent of your money's worth and really give it a shot. The 2-hour Steam return policy didn't exactly exist on PlayStation 2. Picking up my first rifle finds me realizing the dreadful fact that the controls of this game for aiming and shooting are L1 and R1 versus L2 and R2 like all shooters are today. Old crouch and jump controls in games I'm decently used to. Triangle for jump I can understand, but this just feels silly. Thankfully, there is a controller scheme called Quick Shooter, which changes it to L2 and R2 at the cost of changing reloading from the intuitive square button to now having me pressing the L3. AKA pushing down on my analog stick, which is quite funny for a reload, but it's worth the sacrifice. I can't believe I forgot about the L1 and R1 button scheme, since looking back, I can remember constantly having to relearn the shooting controls when bouncing back and forth between Call of Duty Finest Hour and Call of Duty 2, the Big Red one. The Big Red one was the second release for COD and polished out a lot for the franchise. If you want to see a video covering that game next, let me know in the comments. Next, we grab an MP40 and gather with our comrades for a huge push. Get an absolutely based, hyped up Russian speech and our boys flood in. But when they flood in, our sergeant is actually like, yo, we could actually just go around. So instead of telling everybody else that information, he just whispers it to me like a fun little secret. So I follow him and get to see another day because of it. We flank the machine gunners to save some of our fellow soldiers, and it ends the insanely short first mission. It seems like a lot of visuals and scheduled scenes went into that level, but the quality hurt the length. A short introduction is nothing to complain about though, and it's time to go on to mission number 2. Thus begins one of the most iconic levels in my opinion. I remember this one very well. A Nazi flag showing in the level thumbnail with the title, "The Flag Must Fall." Our job is mostly going to consist of traversing up a hill through heavy machine gun fire from all angles with only trenches as our cover, and support from an uphill angle is super deadly. I remember dying a lot on this level growing up. I'm playing on normal difficulty here to get the most intended experience, and I honestly would have played on easy if I was off camera to just enjoy the story and shoot 'em up fun. But at this point, it feels like the enemies die in one bullet anyway, so it makes me feel like I'm on recruit mode. But that might not last long, so let me appreciate it while I can. COD was always ruthless about their difficulty and storylines, even back in 2004 if I recall correctly. If you picked veteran, you were getting a veteran experience. They made sure of that. But before we take to the trenches, we whittle down their defenses on the ground, setting up a machine gun and losing the gunner in the process. I take over in one of the earliest iterations of a video game heavy machine gun segment. It lasts about 5 seconds, as there's no recoil on the gun, no magazine, no overheating mechanic like in current games. It's truly just unbalanced, unrivaled, raining lead upon the enemies. And then we get a Finest Hour classic dramatic cutscene.
There you are. I've been hunting that bastard all day. I'm sorry you lost your sergeant, comrade. We won't let your sacrifice go to waste. I've got a new job for you. The fascists are using the view from that bunker to call in artillery strikes all over the city. We can't take back Stalingrad unless we control that bunker. You lead the men up the hill. Start by taking out the machine guns in those pillboxes. Stick to the trenches. I'll keep you covered from here. That Nazi flag must fall.
We lose Sergeant Puskov. Remember, that guy we specifically know the name of because it constantly tells us whenever we hover over his character. I totally forgot this happens, and it has a fair amount of impact, even though the scene itself is cheesy and predictable. Mostly because of that name tag that we constantly saw and we battled with through the trenches previously. He was truly our guide. Finally comes time to assault the bunkers and take down the Nazi flag by clearing out all 3 machine gunners. And during this process, all I could think was, holy shit. How did they manage to make this so intense? The gunfire over top our heads, the explosions, that slow down time giving me the perfect peek over the bunker to see 3 enemy soldiers, only to have to sporadically, in slow motion, sprint backwards out of the totally fear-stricken in me in that moment. Heading back around to the left side to flank slowly and safely, this assault scene feels more intense and has more going on than certain Xbox 360 era shooters. It's seriously impressive given the limitations of the time, even by today's standards, and it just feels incredible and dramatic. I was not expecting to experience this level of quality. I was expecting a much more rose-tinted goggles experience, but so far, I feel like my memory has been accurate. The game is great in many ways, and the controls and movements are just pretty clunky. Also, the atmosphere being so dark, I do end up getting lost and stumbling around for too much of my playtime. And then as I'm making my way towards the second bunker, I miss too many shots when face to face with an enemy and my health depletes. My first death. The same level I remember dying on so often as a child. I hope this doesn't become a trend. Call of Duty Finest Hour operates off of a static, total health-based system, versus more recent-day shooters adopting the red screen approach where if you get shot too much in a short amount of time, your screen gets red and you die. Take cover and you quickly regen that HP to get back into the action. Finest Hour has health packs that you can save and use in a pinch, as well as an instant health pack that heal you when you pick them up. These elements do promote more exploring, which is well needed in the FPS storyline, but at the cost of needing to focus more on it and actually strategize a bit, not something I would generally want with your average shooter campaign. But maybe I just need to change my mindset and expect something a little more like Brothers in Arms gameplay as opposed to Call of Duty gameplay. It's pretty crazy how much faster paced shooters have gotten, where even the Call of Duty franchise was prioritizing strategy and safe flanking back during its beginnings. But back to the consequences of death. Scattered checkpoints means I have to redo the bunker I already defeated and do the trench fight all over again. Not that I had the super far progress or anything. It'd be worse if I had 2 bunkers defeated and then this happened, but this is pretty standard for the era. They built a great level, and it's okay if you have to experience that level more than once to human error. Other games abuse the lack of checkpoints to an egregious extent, but so far, I don't feel this way. So back to the trenches we march. But then I realize you lose your weapons when you die, so now this whole checkpoint thing seems kind of fucked up.
Okay, now the tuxedos seem kind of fucked up.
But I carry on with my clunky and tough to use bolt-action rifle. Thankfully, I find an SMG somewhere among the carnage. Take out one machine gunner, take out the next, and then almost die as I get distracted by some airplanes in the sky. They took the time to add airplanes slowly crossing over the battlefield with sound effects and everything. They added an insane amount of atmosphere that I would guess many feel, but don't take the time to stop and appreciate. Once in the trenches for the final bunker, I notice a lot of my men get piled up in the same spot, and I start running into them a lot and taking extra damage. I also cross the middle section of the trench for the center bunker, where I died last time, and take massive damage very quickly, finally realizing that in that position, I'm probably in view of the machine gunner, and it's probably a scripted event for me to take a ton of damage there. I step backwards instead of forwards and play things very slowly. Too slowly, to the point of infinite flooding of enemies, and they eventually whittle me down. I run out of ammo and never progress, and eventually just die like a useless wet paper bag. Well, that sucked. It's almost like that whole thing I said about dying with 2 out of 3 bunkers down would make this whole checkpoint thing a lot more fishy, but what else is there a soldier to do? Back to the trenches. On the 3rd attempt, I explore the right side a little more and find a hidden little ammo bunker with health packs, ammo, and a big fat bipodable. Is that a word? A big dumb gun you can fit on a bipod that you can walk around with and spray hot metal into your enemies. After more trench walking and bunker clearing, I'm more prepared for the scripted damage this time. I do go prone for a bit of this section, and it seemed to help a fair bit, dodging excess stray fire. I finally go to clear the main bunker, and my teammates want me to get shot so bad. Doorways are a constant source of frustration, trying to peek over your comrade's shoulders to hit the enemy, but they always walk in the way, and you just straight up can't fire if you're hovering over your allies with your crosshair, allowing me to take retaliation shots from the enemy while not getting off any shots of my own. Even after the deterrence of my so-called friends, we clear the bunker with just enough HP, no health packs in reserve, and get the super satisfying action of taking down the Nazi flag. Some sniper girly is impressed and wants to work with us further, bringing us to the conclusion of the second mission. Mission 3, titled Dead in Her Sights, is going to have us working with her new sniper friend. Or so I thought. This is when we actually learn about her backstory. Tanya Pavlovna, a small girl from a small Russian town that was invaded, separating her from her family and taken under the wing of some Soviet soldiers in a platoon. One day, the platoon was getting wiped out by opposing forces, and Tanya was pushed back into a building. She picked up a rifle and was able to kill 4 German soldiers, helping to protect her squad mates. After learning about her dark and gritty backstory, instead of taking the view of our previous soldier, we step into the shoes of Tanya, giving us the first playable female character in the Call of Duty franchise. Which personally, I can't think of a better soldier for the job. Sniping incoming tanks and then sniping soldiers for ground support. The sniper rifle feels pretty satisfying to hit big shots with. The clicky and snappy sound effects combined with the hit marker upon kill is super nice. But it is quite clunky and slow on the zoom in, which is good and should be the case on snipers, but I feel like there's a constant frame drop whenever going for that aim down sight on the sniper rifle. And this gives me a good moment to go ahead and talk about performance. I'm playing this game on an emulator even though I do own a physical copy and a system. It just makes it easier to record and script, but I have been getting a decent amount of frame drops and performance struggles. I'm upscaling the game on an emulator to 1080p and recording at the same time, so maybe it's just expected on my RTX 2050 laptop that I mostly use for emulation. But part of me also remembers a lot of frame drops and performance issues even when playing this game for the first time over a decade ago on original hardware. I'll make sure to hop on my PS2 when possible to do a little test and get back to you. All right, this is post-editing RetroPat. So yes, I can confirm that even on original hardware, Call of Duty Finest Hour has pretty severe performance issues, and there's tons of forum posts online all citing the same exact issues. So I don't believe it to be an issue of emulation or performance or hardware or scratch disk or anything like that. It does just seem to be the fact that Finest Hour does not run very well. Which makes sense since it was the first Call of Duty game being ported to console. They just weren't used to that process. Now back to the actual video. Carrying on to the second section of the third mission, after assaulting the tanks and causing a brutal explosion, we flank to the left into the sewers. And this is the first time during this game where I forgot that I was playing an older game, which is always a nice sign of a well-aged game. With the introduction of grenades and more enemies than we've faced head-to-head so far, stray shots and health packs around every corner, this section of the mission kept me mentally busy enough to enter my first mini flow state of just enjoying the experience and living in the moment of battle. There's many shooters today that don't give me this feeling, and I'm pleasantly surprised so far. The lack of jank has honestly been astounding, but the ending of Mission 3 is kind of funny. You just walk into a dead-end tunnel and the screen fades to black. Maybe there's a ladder or something you can't see on camera, but to me it kind of feels like they just ran out of memory for the map and decided it was time to move on. Mission 4, here we come. More sniping with this mission. A lot more, as this calls for 10 minutes of defending a tank inside of a warehouse from incoming soldiers with rocket launchers trying to blast down the door. I lost miserably on my first attempt, with 6 minutes or so still left to defend. On the second try, I followed the flow back and forth from left to right and focused the rocket launcher soldiers specifically much more, and made sure to cancel my long sniper reloads with melee attacks to be able to refocus my attention quicker. After defending for the full 10 minutes by protecting the tank for long enough, our comrades who specialize in tank warfare were able to make it to the warehouse, jump in the tank, and invite us in for what I can only imagine will be an explosive adventure. Mission 5 is titled Breakdown, which could mean a plethora of things in reference to World War. Honestly, if it's referring to the tank breaking down, that might be the best option.
My name is Nikolai Badanov. The day after the Germans attacked the Soviet Union, I left my wife and newborn son in the care of my parents and joined the Red Army. Having been a mechanic in Leningrad for years, it was no surprise I was assigned to the 24th Tank Corps. I live for the day we grind Berlin beneath our tracks. Perhaps it's this aggressiveness that won me my own tank crew and assignment in Stalingrad. While my crew and I are like family, there's another comrade who I'll be tied to forever. Her name is Tanya Pavlovna, and she saved our skins as we escaped in the last surviving T-34 after an assault on an old factory near Volgograd. But our tank soon had engine trouble, and the smoke plume was giving away our position. So we found what looked to be a safe place to make repairs.
Once again, we are switching point of views to a fresh Russian soldier, this time to an old tanker mechanic who was part of the platoon that Tanya helped protect. The tank breaks down and enemies close in while repairs need to be made. Tanya helps with supporting fire from up in a building with her sniper, but an enemy tank rolls in, taking aim at her and blasting towards her location. We lose communication with her and have to continue onward. After a successful defense, I have to hop in the tank and I assume I'm just going to be gunner support, and then I have the dreadful realization of how miserable the tank controls are, and I have to be the light machine gunner, heavy artillery launcher, and driver of the vehicle all at the same time, to the wonkiest control scheme known to man. I immediately disregard even attempting to learn that mess of a control scheme. I push through until the end of the level with plenty of HP until I'm supposed to blast an enemy tank and I lose in the 1v1. Which restarts the entire mission. 0 checkpoints. In reality, this mission is quite short, but repeating stuff no feel good. And then I did the entire mission all over again in 5 minutes and then died again. And again, I die in this metal death trap. And I continued to die again and again until I needed to go shred some gnar and take a breather. Alright, after returning from the break, the way that I would normally approach a game like this if I'm stuck at a part with a skill-based strategy is I check out speedruns of the game to see the best strategy possible and try to deviate based on my skill. Call of Duty Finest Hour unfortunately is only ran by one active player named CopV, who thankfully clearly exhibits enough skill and game knowledge to lead me in the right direction. I watch his tank run and find out he stays in the rocket launcher first-person view for the entire section. Now, I assume that's fine for him since he knows the layout of the map so well, but it also makes it way easier to aim and fire your rocket launcher, which is something I struggle to do while moving around in the 1v1. So I finally have a strategy heading into this run. Speed through the initial half of the level as usual in third person, and then immediately switch to the first person and prepare for the incoming tank. Hopefully win. Probably could have came to this conclusion without the researching of the world record pace, but a little research never hurt anybody. I go back prepared and ready for the attempt, and I die again at the same section because an enemy tank followed me from behind across the entire map and blew me apart as I quote-unquote defeated the final tank in the 1v1. Alright, no more rushing through. I'm gonna kill every tank that I pass this time. I believe this is my 7th attempt or so far at this point, and at this point, seeing the forced unskippable cutscene of Tanya getting shot at by the tank annoys me more than anything. Trying to kill all the tanks also just gets me killed because your friendly tanker sucks and you end up in a 3v1 with little to no cover around. Attempt 8 commences. And this time, I die before I even get into the tank, and I feel the tilt causing me to slip away further and further from victory yet again. Why can't I beat this 20-year-old war game for children? I keep at it and jump back into the tanker. Attempt number 9 ends with a way that I haven't seen yet. Apparently, I got too comfortable and let the tank repairman die. Safe to say, I hate this mission now, and I remember dilapidated buildings like this from playing this level as a child and associating it with negative emotions. I'm not exactly sure if it's exactly this level or still something to come, which scares me even more. I used this frustrating level to stall for content and research a little more about the performance of Call of Duty Finest Hour, and from what I found from some old forum posts, this game just generally has poor performance, dropping to 20 FPS at times, even on native hardware. You see, on the emulator I'm using, it shows you 2 different FPSs, the game FPS and the video FPS. I haven't seen my video FPS drop below 60 even for a second, but my game FPS constantly hovers around 30 to 40 during active moments. I don't know nearly enough about the insides of game development or coding to say exactly why this happens, but I think it's safe to say that Call of Duty Finest Hour just has performance issues no matter how you choose to experience it. But please, tell me your anecdotal experience in the comments alongside what console you played on. Maybe on the original Xbox, it would run better with slightly beefier hardware. But enough stalling, let's go back in for attempt number 10. And finally, on attempt number 10, with a combination of speeding through the initial tanks, getting to the headquarters to help defend it, and taking care of all of the ground units, the final tank, and then letting all of the tanks I ignored flood in after me, and taking out all of those one by one, all while constantly switching between a point of views with the hyper clunky controls of the tank, we get it done. After protecting the base, we the player, as Nicola, the older tank mechanic, have a conversation with the general where he tells us we need to transport a backup radio to another station. We also get to see Tanya escorted in a stretcher, letting us know that she lived the blast. Which is crazy, considering I saw her get shot by a tank 10 times. Then I get the worst news possible. I walk towards the objective on the minimap, and it's directing me back towards the tank. Thankfully, it ends the mission, so we get a small reprieve from the chaos. When the next mission begins, we're back in the tank saddle with the objective: proceed to the train station. However, this tank section really helped me appreciate the map design, visuals, and general environment. There's essentially a tank sniper part where you take out 6 machine gunners all poking out of buildings before proceeding to the red square, and you get to take your time and aim and blast the building from afar and seeing all of the buildings crumble in the explosion aftermath. This tank section was also just 10 times easier, probably due to a mixture of factors such as me just being more experienced with the controls, plus less tanks to fight at once, and alongside my teammate being way more helpful in the 2v2 tank fights. Eventually, we stroll up to the train station, which is very visually clear and striking, a great physical objective and location to aim for. We ram the doors down and blast some ground units who are taking to the balconies to attack us with rocket launchers. And here is when I see the most environmental destruction, with the balconies getting totally destroyed. Keep in mind, this game came out in 2004, just 3 years after Red Faction, which is widely known as the first game to have unscripted environmental destruction. So lightly sprinkling some of this in was impressive to me at the time. From here, I stumble around in overly dark environments as per usual until I find a staircase, because up is always the way. Eventually, I make my way to a safe room with a combat medic bandaging up a soldier. And that's when some casual bomber planes drop bombs overhead, which they've been doing the entire mission, and you hear them doing it the entire time. The combat medic even says something along the lines of, "Oh, those planes have been causing rumbling all day." And then at that moment, when he says that, the bombs dropped shake the building enough to crumble the wall next to us, revealing a group of 5 or so enemy soldiers, triggering a violent skirmish that's over in a few seconds. What an incredibly fun little event that occurred using previously established game mechanics. You get used to the planes dropping bombs and don't think anything of them, but then get reminded of how fast they can change things and how crazy the devastation can be, striking just enough fear back into you. That wall being crumbled also opens up the building a little more and allows you to access another staircase you previously weren't able to. And continuing upwards, you're opened up to, in my opinion, a legitimately stunning overhead view of the city. This is seriously the most impressive shot of the entire game so far, and if you compared this shot to what were to be considered to be visually impressive PS2 games at the time, this easily stacks up, if not surpasses. Also, the graphical planes in the sky are actually dropping bombs overhead, and we even see mini explosions on the ground below. Now, they aren't exactly doing structural damage or anything, but I've seen many modern day war games just throw some planes in the sky, adding minimal sound effects, and then they just have them pass over your head, not increasing a sound as they get closer or farther away, not dropping bombs, and essentially just acting as an animated desktop wallpaper. Call of Duty Finest Hour, a PlayStation 2 game, is actually utilizing them and taking it seriously to add the immersion. Call of Duty Finest Hour has a shocking amount of details like this, and it screams to me labor of love versus money printing franchise like many would accuse it of being in current day. I've purposefully not really compared Finest Hour to current day COD as much as comparatively to current day war games, because I don't think it's fair to do so. They just aren't comparable. Activision has clearly gone in a different direction, focusing on multiplayer and battle royale modes over campaigns. Not that one is inherently better than the other, but I don't think it's fair to compare a game whose main goal is to create a good campaign and a storytelling experience versus one that doesn't share that same goal. But enough oogling over the skybox, let's march forward, soldiers. We open a neighboring door to a nice little scouting outpost and deliver the new radio, allowing them to call in the correct coordinates for an airstrike and annihilating the enemy fleet of tanks. Onto one of the final missions for the Soviet campaign. There's actually 3 campaigns, one showing the Soviet/Russian perspective, one showing the British perspective, and the final showing the American perspective.
September 24, 1942, Christmas Eve. What we began at Stalingrad, we were to finish as part of Operation Little Saturn on a remote airfield near the small village of Tatsinskaya. Our assignment was to approach the airfield from the north via the River Don, cutting off and encircling the stranded German forces Hitler had forbidden to retreat. There at Tatsinskaya, we would surprise the airfield, destroying as many aircraft as we could, cutting off the resupplying of Nazis in the Stalingrad pocket. This was an assignment I was going to enjoy. But as we were about to spring our attack, the Germans got word we were there and launched a frantic evacuation. We may have missed yelling surprise, but there was still plenty of party to be had.
So a Christmas sneak attack goes wrong, and now it's just a full frontal fight. Let's jump into things with more tank warfare, which I thought I would hate, but honestly, with better balancing and more practice, I actually do find myself enjoying the section. At the start of the tank section, they start getting attacked by Stukas, which seem to be a type of plane, and it's honestly really fun playing anti-air support with the tank projectiles. But after that, there's honestly not much to say about this level. It's kind of just more of the same. It's another well-balanced tank section followed up by what feels like, thankfully, the first time I fired a gun in a long time. And I only stepped out of the tank to kill 4 soldiers with anti-tank rocket launchers so we can pass through a warehouse. Easily, this was the most uneventful level so far. But I think it's mostly just meant for storyline setup, letting us know it's Christmas Eve and a botched invasion is important, and it sets up for the final level of the Soviet section of Call of Duty Finest Hour. On to the Soviets finale, another tank section beginning. I really hope the other regions have less tank action, even though I've come around to it a little more. It's still getting old. The first area you drive into is pure chaos. Open fields of tanks and soldiers everywhere, no clear dividing line separating the battlefield to show one army versus another. It's like free-for-all dodgeball back in elementary school. Clearing the chaos is shockingly easy with tons of team support, but leaves you feeling overwhelmed in a good way. This is the finale. If things aren't intense, then what are we doing here? Our job is to run around the airfield and take out planes before they can launch and then start moving on. The constant fires all around the area from the destroyed planes is really beautiful, but it also causes permanent 30 FPS, which makes the tank movement feel even more sluggish. Eventually, we make it to a more active airfield with planes taking off, and the commander says, don't let them get off the ground. So as a good soldier, I shoot an airplane taking off over top of my head, which then causes it to fall on top of my tank, and I die in one shot and have to restart the level from scratch. Fuck. No checkpoint gaming really sucks. So I make my way all the way back to the airfield, don't kill any planes right over top of my head this time like a moron, and I take out a bunch of planes and then get tunnel visioned onto a tank and simply run into a plane taking off on the runway like a moron. Third time's the charm. After clearing the airfield, we reach a blocked road and exit our tanks to run and gun the final section, as I presume. And now they finally give us a checkpoint, which is at least reassuring. We reach a road approaching from the low ground of a slight hill, pushing towards 2 large outposts with 2 heavy machine gunners spraying down upon us. I'm forced to weave left and right to the different trenches, and it's a really tough area to progress through with all the gunfire. Especially with the total health system, I take way too much damage and I die on my first attempt, thanking everything in my lifetime for that checkpoint. Now on the second attempt, if you stick to the right path, and take the time to loot the back of an army truck, you'll end up finding a rocket launcher with 2 shots. The first equipable launcher I've seen in the game so far. Surely this will help me take down the 2 heavy machine gunners. I was able to get some lucky pot shots off against the closer one on the left, and just took him out with my MP40. I go to line up and make a shot against the machine gunner on the right side with my rocket launcher, and I aim way too low and I miss the first shot. With only 1 shot remaining, this is gonna matter. The iron sight on the launcher is really hard to see since it blends in with the dark environment around it. For the second shot, I respectfully aim about an inch or 2 higher, and then boom, an explosion sends the gunner flying, making this whole level a lot easier, rewarding my exploration for seeking out that rocket launcher. We head into the tower, go up each staircase, taking control, flanking corners and clearing out our enemies, killing a few captains along the way. Eventually taking full control of the tower, seizing the documents which will be important in the war effort in defeating Hitler during World War II. Now, I understand very little about history and even less about geography, so I'm going to let this cutscene play out.
Look, this will certainly make some heads turn. Let's get back to headquarters.
Nice bonfire you lit up today, comrades. That should keep us warm most of the winter.
By controlling North Africa, the Axis powers would have a better chance of holding the Mediterranean, now the epicenter of the war. Unfortunately for Italian dictator Benito Mussolini, his army is ill-prepared to withstand the British forces in the region. Hitler, fearful that more losses in Africa would jeopardize his efforts on the Russian front, sends General Rommel and his Africa Corps to clean up the mess. By 1942, the Allies decide that the best way to break the Axis powers back is to create another front. An Operation Torch is born of British and American troops. A well-supported, coordinated push through enemy lines, depleting and destroying fuel, food, and equipment would mean the eventual fall of the Third Reich in Africa, weakening Axis aggression throughout the world. All goes as planned, and by January 1943, British General Montgomery's 8th Army has Rommel and his troops on the run, scrambling to make their valiant last stand at the Mareth Line.
And thus brings us to the end of the Soviet section. This script is already as long as some of my other videos in their entirety, and we're only a third of the way through the game. I really hope you grabbed a snack for peak enjoyment, and if not, here's your sign too. Hot Pockets and Baja Blast are encouraged. Let's go ahead and jump into the next section.
My wife finally wrote saying, Edward Carlisle, just asked to do something else. So I did. It turns out having a background in teaching chemistry can get you out of a desk job pretty quick if you have a mind to it. I knew nothing of Popsky's private army or its ties to the Desert Rats until I was in training. This sabotage platoon's philosophy is lightning-fast strikes and massive explosions deep behind enemy lines. It's gratifying to know that every time we light up a fuel depot or munitions dump, we're stalling Rommel's tanks and helping those poor blighters on the front lines. It may not be fighting fair, but the Germans have hardly fought fair in Europe, so to hell with them. My assignments are highly confidential, so as far as the wife knows, I'm still sitting at a desk. But for some strange reason, I've stopped complaining.
Listen up, chaps. The Jerrys have a cozy little setup in this village here. Our job is to break as much equipment as possible, and then dash out before they even know what hit them. Troop B will drive the jeeps behind the Germans and pepper them with machine gun fire. I lead Troop A through town to knock out their communications and burn up their petrol reserves. Carlisle, you're the man with the demolitions. We'll cover you while you set the time and save 4 charges. We'll have to get in and out before everything becomes all spotlights, sirens, and rifles firing. Cock your guns, wet your sights, and ride on. Let's go!
The section just autoplayed, so I didn't even get the chance to pick British or American, but hopefully there's some chronological order here. We step into the feet of a soldier named Edward Carlisle, which just sadly reminds me of Twilight. Growing up with an older sister, I've seen these movies way too many times. A quick Google search lets me know that this is the British campaign. Maybe I've just become deaf to the accent because it was not strong enough to tip me off in total honesty. But alright, it's time to do some British shit. Time to eat beans on toast and kill Nazis. That's just historically what's happening here. Please don't demonetize me, Team YouTube. I somehow always manage to say or do something that seems to make that happen on bigger projects, so hoping to avoid it on this one, fingers crossed. I've definitely reached a point where the constant frame drops and lag to 30 FPS is really deterring me from wanting to play more of Finest Hour, even though the game itself is well designed, which makes it even more disappointing. Our first job is to invade this little camp and fuck shit up, and I love this weapon they give us in the British military. I believe it's called the Sten gun, and it's essentially just the roughest metal pipes mashed and welded together so they could mass produce as many of them as possible, and they were super cheap to make at the time. I'm no gun expert though, so I am absolutely just regurgitating what I've heard other gun experts say that I simply find interesting. But I'm too busy ogling over the gun to pay attention, and I just get shot and die. On my second attempt, I take a long, windy route up to some high ground, but my aim is pretty rusty and I take a plunge to my death. Something tells me I'm overcomplicating this mission. Attempt number 3 comes and I take out the gunners, take out a tank with sticky grenades, aka Semtex grenades, and then die to a soldier defending their headquarters. This game is tough, and the low FPS is making it more frustrating alongside the insanely dark levels where it's impossible to see anything. This is just a shitty experience at this point. As my frustrations grow, I die 2 more times out of pure tilt. And on around the 6th attempt, I clear everything, get to the headquarters, make a push to C4 explode an antenna, and then get blasted by some machine gunners from 2 maps away, immediately losing half of my health. That interaction hardly felt fair, but okay. I generally like machine gun sections in games because it forces you to slowly move up and flank them by making correct movement and cover decisions. But in Finest Hour, sometimes they operate as both an accurately deadly sniper and heavy artillery machine guns that shoot 50 rounds a second. I alt-tab to write something into this script and my game crashes. It's just not my day. I'm going to be taking this as a sign to go work on another project, and I'll see you guys after another breather, which this game keeps encouraging me to do. And unfortunately, very sadly, this is where my review is actually going to come to an end. This was a really difficult decision to make, but I think it's also a representative one of the Finest Hour experience. You see, this game from a design standpoint is downright beautiful. The decisions, the direction, the story, the mapping, the plan for everything to play out in the cinematic way that they intend, it's all beautiful. But it doesn't really play out that way from my experience. The game is held back by its mechanical limitations, especially hardware limitations at the time. This was the first time this franchise tried to move a historically PC game over to console, and it really shows with the poor 30 FPS, mushy textures, and overly dark scenery. Call of Duty feels like a planned masterpiece that ended up as a sloppy mess. But it's still a sloppy mess worth playing, in my opinion, at least for a campaign or two. It's iconic, and Finest Hour is the bare-bones skeleton of the Call of Duty franchise. At least the early beginnings of what would become Call of Duty 2, the big red one. And eventually, even the Modern Warfare and Black Ops series, which would be in the coming future. This was one of my favorite scripts to write, one of the most beautiful games and genius older games that I've played, but also one of the most frustrating ones that I've had to play, and I was ready to be done with it. I truly hope you enjoyed, and if it was worth your time and you made it to this point, quickly taking the time to like the video would just make my day. Or dislike if you hate watched. Subscribe to let me know if you want to see more videos like this one, and if you want to have a physical impact on my ability to make videos like this, you could support my Patreon, linked down below. With enough support, I'd like to aim for one moderately in-depth game review per month, and thank you so much for watching. What are you still doing here? Go play some games. Hey, what's up? Retro Pat here, and I want to say a quick big thank you to everybody whose name is listed here because it means you went above and beyond and supported me via the Patreon, which allows me to put more time, effort, and resources into this channel. Thank you so much, and have a great day.